Good afternoon. Convening a meeting of the House Special Committee to consider miscellaneous communications 1001 and 1002. Today is February 11th, 2022, and it is now 3:04 p.m. This public meeting is being conducted remotely via Zoom with our House IT staff, Ms. Sarah Chang and Mr. Terrence Lau, operating the meeting from conference room 423. In addition, Ms. Morgan Painter from my office is helping to staff this meeting, along with Mr. Mark Morita, acting House Attorney. And with us is also Ms. Sue Flint, who is a court reporter transcribing this meeting. My name is Della Albalati, and I'm chair of this House Special Committee. Joining me today are committee members, Representatives Linda Ichiyama and Scott Matayoshi. Joining us soon will be Representatives Lauren Matsumoto and Amy Peruso. In addition, Vice Chair Mark Nakashima is excused at this time, but will be joining us as soon as he has completed conducting a Judiciary and Hawaiian Affairs Committee meeting that was previously noticed for earlier today. The purpose of today's meeting is to conduct a status conference with the parties, petitioners Michael Goloyu Sr. and Carolyn Goloyu, along with Representatives Sharon Har and her counsel, Mr. Howard Luke, and permit them to ask questions regarding the procedures of this committee upon the resumption of its proceedings. Before we turn to any questions, I would like to explain the procedures of the committee, including the briefing schedule that was shared with the parties earlier this week on February 8th via email communication with all parties. Please bear with me, committee members and parties, as this explanation may be a bit longer for you as you are aware of this background. However, this explanation is important because it is also to inform the public about the purpose and procedures of this House Special Committee, and I will be reviewing the history of this committee as we discussed at our last meeting of this committee on March 30th, 2021. On March 10th, 2021, the Speaker of the House of Representatives received a communication dated March 6th, 2021 from private citizen petitioner Michael Goloyu Sr. on behalf of the Concerned Democrats of House District 42. This communication was subsequently numbered as miscellaneous communication number 1001. In the communication, petitioner Mr. Goloyu requests that Representative Sharon Har's case involving an alleged incident of driving under the influence and conduct following that incident be referred to the Standards of Conduct Committee for investigation and any appropriate action. On March 12, 2021, the Speaker received a second communication dated March 8, 2021 from private citizen Carolyn Martinez Goloyu, petitioning the House of Representatives in accordance with House Rules 46.1 and 46.2. I'll note the presence of Representative and Vice Chair Mark Nakashima, who has just joined us via Zoom. In miscellaneous communication number 1002 from petitioner Ms. Goloyu, she bases her petition on allegations that Representative Har was driving under the influence and driving without an auto insurance policy. She requested that an investigation by the Standards of Conduct Committee be conducted. Rule 4.1 of the rules for the Select Committee on Standards of Conduct is limited to representatives filing a complaint to the Select Committee on Standards of Conduct. In response to these communications on March 18th, 2021, the Speaker issued a memorandum establishing a special committee to consider these two communications pursuant to Rule 14 of the Rules of the House of Representatives. House Rule 14 authorizes the Speaker to appoint special committees for special or temporary purposes to consider and report on matters referred to it. In the memorandum, the Speaker states that the petitioners request the House to investigate whether Representative Har's conduct on and related to the events of February 22, 2021 violates the House Code of Legislative Conduct found in Rule 62. Accordingly, the purpose of the special committee is to investigate the matters referred to it and submit a report of the committee's findings and recommendations to the House once the investigation is concluded. At this committee's March 30th, 2021 meeting, because of the criminal and administrative proceedings involving Representative Har and the events of February 22, 2021 were pending. This committee stayed its proceedings until those proceedings could be concluded. By letter dated May 20th, 2021 to petitioners, myself and Vice Chair Nakashima, the committee was informed by Mr. Luke, counsel for respondent, that both the administrative and criminal proceedings were still pending. Since that time, it has become apparent that the criminal and administrative matters have been resolved, and hence this committee can now resume its proceedings. Before I go into the briefing schedule, which has been established and shared with the committees, I do want to share, as this might actually lead to some of the questions from the parties, that this committee, or this chairwoman, has received ex parte communication. So in full transparency, I do want to explain that there were five ex parte communications received by myself. And I share this because I want to urge both parties and remind them that ex parte communications are not appropriate. For the public, ex parte communications are communications between parties and us as the committee members without communication to the other parties. So on January 11th, 2022, at what appeared to be the conclusion of the criminal proceeding, I received an email communication from Mr. Goloyu requesting what the next action of the committee would be. A second communication was received by Ms. Goloyu, again, apparently asking of myself and actually all reps, this was an email communication, about what the committee would be doing. A third communication was received from Mr. Howard Luke by myself via text after what it appears newspaper reporting on comments made by 3 members of the House of Representatives who are not members of this committee, made comments about this case and apparently asking me if we could provide a written statement of the decision to terminate proceedings. This was in a text message from Mr. Luke to myself. A fourth communication I received from Ms. Goloyu. This time it was a text message, and it appeared to be a video of a song, and then again requesting whether or not we would be continuing to do anything. Finally, on Tuesday, February 8th, 2022, via email, I received another ex parte email communication, this time from Mr. Luke, again requesting that I provide and advise him as to the basis for the reconsideration of the starting of these proceedings. Now, all of these communications I received, I have not responded to them, and we can take up any of the procedural questions raised in these ex parte communications at this time. But as we move forward, I do want to remind all parties, you should not be communicating with me separately, nor should you be communicating separately with other members of this committee, as this is an active committee. So on that note, what was sent to the parties was a briefing schedule. Hold on, let me make sure I get it. Where the parties will be able to submit documentation pursuant to our rules. I apologize, members. I have much papers. If we can take a quick recess, I need to locate my memo, members. May we take a quick recess? Thank you, reconvening. I apologize for that, members. I have the proper documentation in front of me. So members and to our parties, what was provided to you was a timeline for documentation to be submitted pursuant to our rules for the conduct of this committee. Documentation to be submitted by petitioners will be due on Friday, February 25th of this year by 4:30 p.m. And respondents, you will be able to provide any submittals by Friday, March 11th, 2022. These submittals shall be the complete statements of your case. Petitioners pursuant to this committee's rules, Rule 5, will have the burden to prove your case by clear and convincing evidence. We do reserve the right as the committee to issue a recommendation that is based solely on the party's submittals, but we also reserve the right to question if members have any questions based on the submittals to the parties once all of those submittals have come in. I'd like to open it up now at this point to the parties, if they have any questions about our procedures thus far. And first, I'll open it up to petitioner Michael Goloyu. Go ahead, Mr. Goloyu. Any questions?
Yes, one. First, I'm sorry, I didn't realize sending that email, but it's based on that email. Will there be, whatever it is, the decision before the end of this legislative session this year?
If the question is, and I'll repeat that, the question is, will the committee complete its work before the end of the legislative session this year? Our hope, Mr. Goloyu, is that we will, and based upon the schedule that we have provided you by the parties, we do believe that we can complete our work by the end of this legislative session. Any other questions, Mr. Goloyu?
No, that's the only one I had for now. Thank you.
Okay, Mrs. Goloyu, any questions from you? You are on mute, Mrs. Goloyu.
Yes, I'm okay. I've changed that. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now, Mrs. Goloyu. Go ahead and
Okay.
ask your questions.
At this point, I have no questions other than to say I thought today was the end result. That's why I've submitted everything I have. Do I have to resubmit that?
Okay. I will note the members of the committee have received submittals from Mr. and Mrs. Goloyu. We will post those to the website, the House website, for the web page for this matters, so that it can be shared. It is a public document, so that it will be shared with Mr. Luke as well as the public. And you don't have to resubmit any of those matters to the committee. But I will note to the petitioners that your documentation deadline is actually Friday, February 25th.
25th. Okay. Well, we'll keep working then. Thank you so much.
Mr. Luke, any questions from you?
Yeah, I do. The document you just referred to, you and other members of the House have received the documents from the Goloyus, from petitioners?
Yes, those documents appear to be their submittals, Mr. Luke. So we will provide those to you and forward those to you immediately. We will also provide those documents to the chief clerk. This committee has a public page at which the documents of this committee will be made public. And so we will also post those there. All
right. And what do you anticipate the timeline would be before I can receive those documents to review?
As soon as we are off of this, we will forward those emails. They came to us via email, Mr. Luke.
Okay, thank you.
We will forward those to you, and then also provide them to the chief clerk to have them available publicly.
And I would assume that your statement regarding ex parte communications would be in effect currently, so that there will be no further ex parte communications to either the committee or to individual representatives. Is that correct? Yes.
So I urge the parties, in this time of email and social media to be very careful. Our committee members have been instructed about the sensitivity of this work. So, there's to be no ex parte communications about these matters with any of the committee members or the parties.
All right. And when you say committee members and the parties, what about the rest of the legislators? I've noticed that there are a lot of CCs from petitioners to other members, other representatives, and I'm not sure about the senators, but those I think are prohibited as well. Am I correct in that assumption?
It is, Mr. Luke, I would not feel comfortable constraining petitioners from exercising their free speech rights with other members of the legislature. I would urge petitioners on this matter that public communications are not helpful. But Mr. Luke, I cannot stop them from communicating to other legislators, nor would I stop you, Mr. Luke, from communicating to other legislators as well.
Okay. What about rules of evidence? Are the rules of evidence going to be observed, or any rules of evidence that are promulgated by the special committee?
Mr. Luke, you're asking precisely the important questions and recognizing that this is a different kind of proceeding. We are looking closely at what types of rules of evidence will apply and how we move forward. I would generally say that yes, all rules of evidence will apply in this situation. That's why we ask in our letters to the parties that the written documentation included with their statements should have reliable and trustworthy supporting evidence, witness declarations signed and subject to penalty of law. So we are looking for indicia of reliability and trustworthiness. But Mr. Luke, I cannot at this point say, whether all rules of evidence do apply. I know that this committee is going to render a fair decision when we come to that point of having to make a decision. But we are dealing with petitioners who may not be as savvy, Mr. Luke, as yourself. And so we will take up issues of evidence as they come.
Okay. I guess another question I have is whether or not, I understand now the deadlines, whether or not submissions can be made to the committee, for example, motions or requests, I should call it, because this is non-court, requests to the commission, to the committee prior to the deadlines by the parties. In other words, for myself, prior to March 11. If I have special requests, could I submit them prior to my final documentation production?
Mr. Luke, I would say that what you're suggesting is potentially dispositive motions. And what I would request, Mr. Luke, is that your dispositive motions be submitted on the same day as you submit your submittals.
Okay, so you want everything at once rather than piecemeal over the period between now and the deadlines?
Yes, and also, Mr. Luke, I would have you presume that any dispositive motions are not going to be taken up immediately. They will be taken up under advisement or under advisement. So you really should, once having received the submittals from petitioners by Friday, February 25th, then you should proceed accordingly.
Okay, I'll do that. I believe that's all.
Madam Chair.
Hold on, petitioner. Go ahead, Mr. Luke. Can you complete your last question?
Yeah, that's okay. I'll just pass right now. That's all I have for the moment.
Okay, petitioner, Mrs. Goyle, you go ahead. You have another question?
Yes, more of a clarification. Because we've been petitioners and we didn't know the rules of the game, we're not paid attorneys. So we do hereby say we will not do any more ex parte, and we will only give you information by your deadline. So you will not be hearing from me on this matter before the stated deadline. But I just wanted to make that clear. We're not attorneys, and we're sorry if we ever overstep the bounds. But now I'm hoping that Mr. Luke will also cease and desist. So thank you very much for your time and effort. And I'm hoping that the committee itself is doing some investigation. Because, but anyway, thank you very much and have a good weekend.
Okay, stay on the line, Mrs. Goloyu. Thank you.
Okay.
We acknowledge that you are not attorneys, and I appreciate that you will no longer be engaging in ex parte communications with myself or other members of this committee on this matter. And I know that Mr. Luke is also going to make that commitment. So in light of what you did submit already for the submittals, Ms. Goloyu and Mr. Goloyu, we will still post those, but you have until Friday, February 25th to complete any submittals to the committee. Do you understand that?
Yes, I do.
Okay,
Yes, I
thank you.
do. And Mike's nodding his head.
Okay, thank you. We see that. Mr. Luke, any last questions?
No further questions. I just have one comment, and maybe you can advise the parties to this hearing. At the last time we met, there was a pejorative word that was stated by one of the petitioners at the conclusion of the hearing. It was, I don't know if it was taped, but I thought it was, my personal opinion, not only disrespectful, but, unnecessary. So I would ask that both parties be admonished to keep this on a civil plane and a respectful plane to each other. We respect the petitioner's petition, and I would ask that it'd be a two-way street. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Luke. Yes, I believe and I know and I trust that all parties now moving forward will engage in this process civilly. The rules have been outlined, the deadlines have been outlined, and the expectations has been set forth that we will conduct these proceedings civilly and in accordance with the rules.
Thank you.
There being no further questions, I do want to take a look at my committee members. Are there any questions from you to me? And there being none, this committee meeting is adjourned.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're adjourned.
Mahalo.